Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sridivya, and today we'll be discussing about this environmental impact assessment on human health and environment. So, all these classes we've been discussing what is environmental impact assessment, what are its concepts, the process involved, the methodology to be adopted for different kind of projects, and how does this, new projects, how does this affect the community, or how does it affect the air, how does it affect the environmental aspects such as air, water, surface water, groundwater, noise, and all these, and how does it also impact the socio-economic status of the region, like how does it, how does the project affects the migration of the people in and out, and then economic wise, employment wise, and everything. So apart from all that, let us also look into this health issues as well. So basically this impact assessment mainly affects the human health in the form of pollution, right? So pollution, either it could be air, water, soil, mainly from the industrial emissions, refinery, water waste disposal, transportation, which ultimately leads to the respiratory illness, cardiovascular problems, cancer, and other related health issues. All right. And then we have to look into the resources, how it is getting depleted, right? Now, natural resources such as air, water, forest, how it is impacting the livelihoods and the health will be looked into. And then habitat destruction, biodiversity loss, and all these, how it is internally affecting the social and economic aspects by changing in the lifestyle, economic disruptions, which causes again mental health, and then social cohesion and access to the healthcare. Coming to the noise and vibration, where due to the projects such as construction and operational activities of any project, which generate the noise and vibrations, leading to the sleep disturbances and other health problems. And coming to the accidents and health hazards, which is mainly caused by the industrial facility infrastructure projects, which can actually pose the risk to the accidents, and to that directly impacts the human health. So coming to the integrating how this EIA is involved into this human health, by identifying, first of all, we have to identify the potential health hazards, what kind of pollutants and what kind of potential accidents and social economic changes can be caused due to the project, and how this EIA will be helped, that and all we'll be looking into. And to also assess the exposure pathway, so in which way, how the people are getting exposed to it, whether it is direct or indirect, or mainly by inhalation, ingestion, or that by the direct contact due to the spills, or air pollution by inhaling, or ingestion by taking the water, and all these, they come into this aspect. And then coming to the evaluating the dose response, so how much quantity, the level of exposure is there in order to deteriorate the health concepts and all. So that and all will be determining in this step. And then characterizing the health risk, so in which magnitude and what is the probability of getting the health risk and all will be assessed during this characterization step. And to also develop by identifying and then assessing the effect, and then to evaluate the effect, and then characterizing, and then followed by um, developing the mitigation measures. All right, measures in order to avoid, reduce, or to also like negotiate or offset the negative health impacts and all right, which is mainly causing the changes, and changes in the health and all. And these mitigation measures can be included in the project in order to change the design of the project, and also to implement the pollution control technologies, and health monitor by having this health monitoring program, and also the community engagement. All these also come into the mitigation strategies. So coming into the potential impacts, so what are the main potential impacts here? Mainly we have to identify. All right, so identifying the potential health effects during the projects, which mainly associate with the project. And then we have to even identify the health impact sources, which mainly requires the professional knowledge. All right, so the professional knowledge through expertise or professional judgment by environmentalist experts or sociology people. All these expert people or the stakeholders, these people have the professionals will be more experienced in a particular aspect or a particular domain. All right, so those people will be identifying the effect, and then the level of impact or the severity of the events will be characterized mainly on the basis like routine category or extraordinary category or the maximum scenarios. So these different levels can be taken into consideration in order to know the impact of the project. All right, so if it is under routine scenario, which is like on a day to day operation, which is like mainly planned or like if it is like air, so daily on the basis like we keep inhaling, but severity will not be there, but long term severity will be there, right? In that way, that is a routine scenario. Whereas extraordinary scenario where sudden failure of a project or sudden spills, so that is like occurs once in a while, right? That one. So maximum scenario is the one which is like, which is generally doesn't happen, but if it is happen like major accidents or some catastrophic failures, all these are things like which occur like very rarely, that kind of things. Okay, so coming into the prediction of the health impact, so we have to predict. So what is that? First one is the hazard identification. So what are those hazards? So what are the potential sources of hazards, like some specific chemicals or particulate matter, maybe it is like air pollutants or some water contaminants, noise generation. So these are all like hazards. So these are different kinds of hazards which has to be identified first. So after the identification, we have to understand the exposure. So we have to assess the exposure of it, how it is, what is the pathway of it, how it is the what is the magnitude, the frequency, the duration of the exposure, and then to characterize or to quantify the people, how much it is getting contaminated to number of people, like that. And main components to be assessed are the identification of the exposed population, that is the pathway, how it is getting exposure, and the contaminant characterization should be done, and the number of people or different level of exposure for different populations and pathways to need to be characterized, which can be done by monitoring, environmental monitoring and modeling, and activity pattern by having the people daily habitats, like what is their consumption rates, what is the time they have spent outside, what are their habits, and all these also come into scenario. And then exposure scenario will be like realistic scenario, whether routine operation or accidental or extreme, that can and all will be evaluated. And then uncertainty of analysis, so they will be like quantifying the uncertainty, like rarely whatever happens, like how frequent, like last time when it happened, or like that kind of things will be quantified in this. And then dose response assessment or the toxicity assessment, that is like there is a characterization relationship between the dose, that is the amount of hazard received, and the likelihood and the severity to happen or to also deteriorate the health. That and all will be characterized. And then main information which needs to be focused is the critical health effects need to be identified. The amount and the magnitude of dose response curves need to be evaluated, and the concentration of the doses need to be regulated, and that should actually follow the regulatory or the compliance along according to the guidelines and all. And the mode of action, that is mainly how it is affecting the, what is the biological mechanism involved and all. And then uncertainty analysis, or like how frequent the uncertainties are there in order to you know understand the variability in human sensitivity and all. And then health impact characterization, where the pollutant exposure assessment as well as the dose response assessment, where will be evaluated in order to estimate the magnitude of the potential health impacts to the exposed populations. So based on the exposure, the health effects can be characterized as, and what will be the further consequences of the affected population also will be coming into consideration. All right, so for this, main steps will be the estimating the health risk, describing the nature and severity of the impacts. All right, so how moderate it is, how severe it is, or chronic, mild, fatal, all these also come into account. And then sensitivity subgroups, identifying also whether they are adults or children or low income communities, or which kind of people are getting sensitive in this during the project, and all will be considered. And also to assess the burden of disease, like the daily life cycle, or how frequent the hospitalization is occurring, or how much is the rate of premature deaths, disability due to the projects. All this also comes into consideration. All right, then again, considering the uncertainty and the variability, and also the qualitative and quantitative assessment are also primarily important to assess the human health effect due to the project and all. So coming into the mitigation mainly should be controlled by the source. All right, control through the source, that is from where exactly it is getting spilled. For example, if it is an industry, from there the control or the mitigation need to be started, all right, by including more cleaner technologies or reducing emissions like that. And control of exposure, by not staying near to it, near to the project, or maybe in some buffer zones should be arranged such that they will not people will not enter into the buffer zone, and ultimately reducing the effect of by the project. And through health services department also, can be the health impacts can be mitigated mainly by addressing and managing any adverse health effects that may still occur despite the source and exposure control. All right, so mainly by improving mainly primary healthcare centers, here and there they can implement this kind of practices. And then developing specialized medical services, implementing public health and surveillance, and enhancing the emergency preparedness and the response. So by doing all this, the adversity of the project impact can be mitigated. All right, so come, let's now look into this environmental audit. So why do we even conduct this audit? In order to minimize the effects, in order to identify the potential projects, and identify whether the rules, or whether the companies or the industries are following the environmental laws and all. And that all we'll be looking into this environmental audit. So mainly it is a systematic, documented, periodic and objective process in order to evaluate an organization's activity, process or services which are in relation to assess the compliance with that of relevant statutory and internal environmental requirements, facilitating the management control of environmental practices, and to evaluate the environmental performance. All right. Hmm. So the main purpose of this environmental audit is to verify the environmental performance, identify the areas for the improvement, and ensuring the regulatory compliance with that of government bodies, and then assess the effectiveness of the environmental management systems. So first, and also the timing also. So when exactly this operation to be held, or the operation of an existing facility or an activity, or sometimes after decommissioning, this auditing will be performed. All right. The main aspects which auditing will be looked into is to assess the compliance with that of legal and the regulatory requirements, whether so the objective of this is to determine the organization's adherence in all applicable environmental laws, regulations, license, and the standards according to the state, national and local levels, and to facilitate the management control of environmental practices. So for this, the main objective is to inform the management, to provide the management with that objective information on the environmental performance and compliance status, and enabling better decision making and control over the environmental aspects by involving mainly reduction strategies and also the waste prevention. All right. So if you look into this waste prevention and reduction, so mainly it has to be integrated with that into the objectives of the program, and also which has to be also related to the environmental performance and identifying the area for the improvement and evaluate the effectiveness of environmental management systems. And also this environmental audits, particularly like they more often look into the opportunities to minimize the waste generation at the source. All right. At the source, and then reduce the materials and reuse the materials as well, and also the recycle the materials effectively. So the main objective is to for the organization with EMS, that is environmental management systems in place, and the audit aims to verify the system which is implemented effectively and maintained properly, and to achieve the outcomes as planned, and include its effectiveness in driving waste prevention and reduce the reduction of the initiative. And then let's see into this placing this environmental information in the public domain. So after conducting the audit and after preventing all these preventing measures and all these, also then it will be placed in the public domain, whether it is social social platform, media, and all these also. So but not all the environmental audit findings are necessarily made public, right? So if it is a smaller one, it can be ignored or it will be just within the organization. But if it is having a huge impact, then yes, definitely wide public will be exposed to this, and transparency will be promoted, and also along with the accountability. So the main objective to keep the auditing in the public domain is to raise the awareness of the environmental issues within the organization, and also to facilitate the communication about the environmental performance to both internal and external stakeholders. All right. So let's look into this types of environmental audits. So there are mainly three types. One is the compliance audits, where these assess to adherence to environmental laws, regulations, internal policies, and all. And it also verifies if the organizations meets the legal requirements related to the air, water, waste management, and health hazards. And mainly by doing this, we will be understanding the access to adherence of the environmental like organization, that is to which extent the organization is complying with that of the requirements, whether it is following the legal regulations or not. And then non-compliance identification, that is any instances whether the organization is failing to meet these obligations or not will be detected. And to evaluate the effectiveness of the control, that is to design and operation of the internal controls aimed at ensuring the compliance will be assessed. And recommendation of the corrective actions, that is the purpose to propose the measures to address the identified non-compliance and improve the compliance process, and make sure that the company or the organizations follows the environmental or the legal requirements necessary. And then to prevent the future non-compliance, that is mainly to help the organization in order to establish and maintain the culture of compliance, to follow the regular regulations. And assurance can be offered by the management, company's management, or the stakeholders, regulator bodies, which is operating legally and ethically. All right, by minimizing the risk also, can auditing can be helpful, that is to mitigate the risk occurring associated with the non-compliance, such as legal penalties, financial losses, and reputational damage. All these also, by including the organization will be able to conduct the audit often. And then management system audits. So basically any organization, in order to have good management systems, good following good regulations of laws and all, they should perform this environmental management systems, and follow the standards like Indian standard organization, that is ISO, sorry, international one, ISO, that is the one 14 14001. And this mainly examines the policies procedures, and how well this environmental management system is implemented and maintained to achieve the environmental objectives. So the main goal of this management is to confirm the audit criteria, and then whether it is effectively implemented and maintained or not, and kept up to date or what, and then also to assess whether it is effective in achieving the organization's objectives. And all these also come into this management system audits. And coming to the waste audits, and mainly it evaluates the waste generation and waste management practices. And so you know different types of waste and type will be the being generated, will be identified, and determine the sources of waste within the organization or the facility, to assess the effectiveness of the current waste management practices, identify the opportunities for the reduce, reuse, and recycling process, and improve the segregation of waste and the reduction of contamination in the recycle streams, and reducing the waste disposal cost, and track the progress towards the waste reduction goals. All right, so these all comes into that category. And coming to the energy audit, where specifically it focuses on the consumption of the energy, identifying the areas for the improvement and promoting the energy efficiency, and to reduce the mainly to reduce the energy cost, improve energy efficiency, enhanced environmental performance, and increased asset value, and comfort and productivity improvement. All these, and identification of the equipment issues, compliance with the regulation and standards, and access to the incentives and rebates. All these also comes into consideration during the energy audits. All right, so firstly we have to identify the energy saving measurements, and then reduce the waste, and by identifying the source of waste generation, and lowering the energy consumption by having energy efficient buildings with much ventilation, and better lighting with good productivity and comfort, and inefficient equipment which will be repaired and all. And regulations for green building certifications should be taken, and offering the financial incentives for implementing energy efficiency and its implementation against the defined set of criteria. So all these also come into the energy audit. So when we looked into this health and safety audit, where every company or the organization should verify the organization's health and safety management system and implement it against a defined set of criteria. All right, so mainly this looks into the health and safety policy and objectives of where organization HSMS will be reviewed, and assessed. The risk assessment and management will be evaluated by identifying the potential hazards, assessing the risk, and implementing the potential control measures and all. And whether the organization is following or safety legislation and health in India and Telangana, as well as the other applicable standards also will be verified according to the legal criteria. And then organizational structure and responsibility. In this, mainly the roles, the responsibility, and accountability for the health and safety at all the levels of organization will be evaluated. And training and competence, whether the assessment of the adequacy of health and safety training provided to employees and other relevant parties in order to ensure that they have the necessary skills and knowledge in order to perform their task safely. So, for this, the training and competence will be provided by the organization to the employees, and then communication and consultation. And for this, whether there should be a process for internal and external communication on the health, where the employees will be involved into it, and then decision making will be made. And the operational control, where the review of the procedures and work instructions will be provided in order to ensure the safe work practices, and include all the control of contractors and visitors. All these also will be reviewed. in this process. And emergency preparedness and response will be always there, by providing the medical emergencies and handling the procedures for handling the potential emergencies and all will be provided by the organization for the work people. And then monitoring and measurement, where the evaluation of the systems for monitoring health and safety performance, including the incident reporting, investigation and analysis, and then incident investigation and corrective actions will also be there, which will be reviewed. The process for the investigation accidents, identifying the root causes and implementing the corrective and preventive actions, and management review, which always will be there to ensuring its continuity, suitability, adequacy and effectiveness. And safety plant equipment, substances, and then welfare facility, occupational health, all also will be coming into consideration in order to for the prevalent health risk in the region, or in the workplace mainly. And the liabilities definition audit, so this is the one where the audit scrutinizes how an organization defines, identifies, and also classifies, as well as it records the obligation to the external parties. And the main goal of this is to ensure that all the liabilities are properly understood and accounted for by minimizing the risk for the financial misstatements, and also the legal issues for the projects or for the operational disruptions and all will be considered in this liabilities and definition audit. And the main objective for this type of auditing is that to have a clarity and accuracy of the organization's objectives, and the completeness and proper classification, whether it is the liabilities are in terms of financial, operational containment and all these, and compliance, whether it is following the legal laws and all, and risk management, in order to identify the potential risk associated with the poorly defined or unrecorded liabilities, and improved financial reporting and operational efficiency, in order to have a good managed environment in the organization. So the next type of audit is the property transfer audit. All right. So in this, the main object is that between the buyer and the seller. All right. So the main objective is to verify or verification of the ownership, to in order to confirm the legal ownership of the property by the seller, and it should have a clear title. All right. So the properties need to have a clear and marketable title, and free from lines, and then mortgages, and then legal disputes, all they should not be there. So in order to avoid that, so clear title should be there, which has to be verified by the seller. And then sorry, which has to be verified by the buyer. And then accuracy of the property details, so they should verify the accuracy of all the property related information in order to have a good property or transparency for between the buyer and the seller, and which also includes the brown boundary area, survey numbers, and everything has to be put it into details about the project. Compliance with that of regulations, that is whether it is having a applicable, following the applicable laws, rules, and stamp duty requirements are all done in the paperwork, and land revenue code should be there. And the diligence for the buyer, mainly to provide the buyer with assurance that they're acquiring a property with a valid title, clear title, without any hidden liabilities or the legal issues. So this auditing will help us in by having a very crisp and clear paperwork of the project, and ensuring the transparency between the both parties, both that is the buyer and the seller, and the identification of the potential risk in order to prevent, have the mitigation measures, or it has to be totally addressed between both the buyer and the seller. And the next audit is the waste minimization audit. Here mainly we have to look into that uh, waste stream identification, quantifying the waste generation, how much in the measure of the amount of the waste generated at a point, and pinpoint waste sources, and analyzing the waste composition of it, whether it is compostable, whether it is recyclable or non-recoverable components, that and all will be analyzed, and evaluating the current practices and disposal, treatment method, storage method, segregation, collection, all these also will be evaluated, and waste minimization opportunities will also be identified by material substitution, process modification, improved operational practices, or modifying the design, product design, and all, and then also to assess the feasibility of the options, that is techno-economic feasibility, and identifying the waste minimization opportunities, and by developing the action plan, establishing the baseline data for tackling the progress of the waste reduction efforts and the waste minimization effects measures, and ensuring the regulatory compliance and the reducing the cost. And so if we look into the protocol now, all right, so till here we have looked into how this environmental audit will be helping the organization to identify the risk, to identify the target of it, and to assess how severe it is, how you whether it is following the regulatory compliance along with the government or regional government agencies, state-hold consultants, and all these, and then how it is proper from waste management or anything like that, how it is developed, how it is managed, how it is like reducing the cost of it, and all will be was already discussed, right? So now we will be looking into the protocol, so how this exact like auditing will be performed. So mainly initially the pre-audit activities, all right. So like defining, so pre-audit as in like before the performing of auditing, like pre-auditing will be done where mainly the scope and objectives will be defined, that is audit, why it is performed, and all will be considered in this place, and then audit team, form audit team, that is a qualified leader or the team members with the respective expertise, and all they all will be forming a team. They gather the information of the of a particular particulate or a particular pollutant and all these, and that they develop the audit plan by scheduling the place, scheduling the location, time, logistics, and everything, and then prepare the checklist basically based on the criteria tailored to the Telangana regulations or any other regional regulations, and then communicate the plan with that of auditee or of the person who is like auditing, or arrange the open meeting with that of public participation and all. So these all comes into the pre-auditing activities, and before the actual audit begins, all right. So mainly we have to define the scope and objectives, why the auditing which should be performed, and then how the auditing team will be taken into consideration, and gather the information, if it is relevant to air expert, if it is relevant to water expert, like that, and then different kind of information will be gathered, whether the legal documents of the project is like whether permitted, the policies, the regulations, and all these also coming into that, and uh, audit plan will be done accordingly, and then checklist according to the regulations of a region, and then planning will be done with that of auditee, and by having an open meeting, all right. Now, so coming into the activities which will be performing at the site, all right. So the auditor will be going to the sites and have the open meeting where the introduction of the plan or the review the plan and addressing the queries of the public, and all these also will be done in the opening meeting. And the data collected will be by reviewing the document, that is on-site verification of the documents, and the procedures will be evaluated by the auditing team. And then interviews will be there in order to have a personal one-to-one personal discussion will be there in the local context. And the observation of the site or the practices and the controls will be done according to the regionally focused. And sampling, so if at all it is planned, all right. So otherwise it is, if it is not planned, the sampling will not be performed. If it is mainly water or air, if they think that the project review or the interviews or observation through which they have a doubt whether the project is not performing accurately, then maybe the sampling and the monitoring data will be reviewed and all. And also they evaluate the evidence of it, that is the compare the finding with that of the according to the criteria. And then document findings, that is the whether the record is evident of conformities and non-conformities clearly. And then daily team meetings will be there in order to have a good progress. And prepare for closing, that is summarizing the findings and conclusions and closing of the meeting by having a good findings, explain the non-conformities and next steps, and further what we will be doing, and that and all will be also discussed during the closing meeting. All right. For the post audit activities, so for preparation of this, the prepare the audit report. All right. So once the audit report is ready with that of pre-existing data or the current data and everything, the report will be prepared. That is the comprehensive report detailing scope, findings, conclusions, and recommendations based on the region, and distribute the report with that of auditee and the relevant stakeholders. And auditee develops the CAP, that is the correct action plans for the non-conformities, and then review and approve the CAP, that is the um, audit team will review the adequacy of the plans, and then it has to be followed up and verified properly. And the formal closure of the audit will be done once all the issues will be cleared, and the audit related documentation will also be maintained. All right. So main stages. All right. So what the stages what we have discussing during the auditing, before auditing, or post auditing and all. So let us look into that in detail. So mainly during the audit program planning, that is the pre-auditive audit activities, where the main defining the objectives and scope. All right. So for this objectives and scope, where particularly stating that the scope or purpose of the audit, whether the it is following this ISO 14001 activities and all, and then defining the specific facilities process and environmental aspects which are getting covered within the organizational operations, and to identify the specific audit criteria, that is why exactly ISO has to be performed. Yeah, and then establish an auditing team and gathering the preliminary information by the environmental policy, waste generation, post audit, past audit reports, documentation. All these also will be considered, and plan preparation, and then audit checklist and protocol. And auditee will also be there by having an open discussion and on-site activities, as we have already discussed. It will be mainly the open meeting which will be organized by the audit team and respective people, and data collection will be mainly by the document reviewing or interviews, observation, sampling, and monitoring, and evaluating the audit evidence, documenting the audit findings. Daily team meetings will be there, and closing of the meeting, and then post audit activities by including this data analysis and interpretation, audit reporting, and review and approval of the audit report, and following up verification and correctiveness of the actions, and maintaining the audit records particularly. So if we look into this auditing and all, so auditing should be basically according with that of regulatory standards. That is mainly ISO 14001. So which will be recognized, ISO 14001 is an internationally recognized standard for the environmental management system. So mainly it provides the framework for the organizations in order to identify, manage, monitor and improve their environmental performance. All right. So while this standards is mainly applicable for all types of organizations, and also it provides or it offers the significant benefits and structured approach to solid waste management. So this ISO 14001 is also applicable to any organization regardless of its size, type and nature, which mainly wishes to improve its environmental performances. Alright, and it also provides a structured approach to manage the environmental responsibilities contributing to the environmental sustainability. So if you look into the main aspects, so main aspects of this ISO 14001 is to establish an environmental policy. That is, an organization should have some environmental policies and it has to define them and identify the environmental aspects and the impacts that organization will be having due to its activities, and the set of objectives, environmental objectives and targets, and so that and all will be like priorly set and planned in order to have a good environmental performance and implement and control and procedures. So mainly managing the environmental aspects and to ensure the compliance with that of regulations, and also to monitor and measure the environmental performances, conduct the internal audits, and then review and improve the environmental management system. And the main benefits of this implementing this ISO 14001 is mainly to improve the environmental performance, enhance the regulatory compliance, cost savings, increased stakeholder confidence, and enhanced reputation and competitive advantage. All right. So mainly for this requirements, so in order to achieve or get a certificate on this ISO 14001, mainly we have to establish a environmental management system for an organization. All right. So in this context, mainly understanding the organization is a very critical, that is to determine the internal and the external issues relevant to its purpose, and the effect which affects its ability to achieve the intended outcomes of the management system, and then to identify the needs and expectations of the interested people. All right. Mainly identify the stakeholders and the relevant needs and expectations related to the environmental performance, and determining the scope of the environmental management system. So mainly in order to have a environmental system management and all, mainly mainly the scope or the boundaries and applicability of the management system need to be defined, and environmental management system where in order to establish, implement, maintain and continually improve the EMS process. So coming to the environmental policies, where the policy or to establish or to implement to maintain an environmental policy that is appropriate to the purpose or the content of the organization, and including mature scale environmental impacts of the activities, products and services, and also it provides the framework for settling the environmental objectives. It also include a commitment to fulfill its compliance and regulations, and within the organization it is communicated and it is also valuable to the interested parties and all. And then coming to the environmental planning, where in this environmental planning, mainly the actions will be there in order to address the risk and opportunities. Mainly, it identifies the environmental aspects of the activities, products, services, and their associated environmental impacts, and identifying the regular relevant compliance with that of obligations, and then determining the risk and opportunity related to this environmental aspects and regulatory laws, and then environmental objectives and planning in order to achieve them. All right, so to achieve the policy and all, they have to have good objectives and planning. It mainly ensures the objectives which are measurable, monitored, communicated, and updated as appropriate, and plan how to achieve the environmental objectives, including what will be done, how it will be done, who will be done, what will be the results, how it will be evaluated, and all these things. And operation, during the operation, mainly the operational planning and control will be there, where in order to establish, implement, control, or maintain the process, they need to meet the EMS, that is environmental management system requirements, and implement the actions. So this mainly includes the establishing operating financial process, implementing control for the process in accordance with the of reporting criteria, maintaining the documented information in order to um, conduct the necessary actions in order, and have the confidence that the process have been carried out as planned, and controlling the planned changes, and also to review the consequences of the unintended changes, and taking an action to mitigate any adverse effects. So that can also be done by outsourcing, in order to ensure the close control or influence over the environmental relevant outsourced process. And emergency preparedness and response, mainly it has to establish, implement, and maintain the process needed to prepare for the emergency situations. All right, coming to the performance evaluation, where monitoring, management, analysis, and evaluation should be there in order to determine the needs, and have a documented information as an evidence for the results. All right, so there will be another audit called internal audit, where the auditing will be done inside, at a or a planned location or an intervals, in order to perform in order to provide information on the on whether the EMS conforms the organization own requirements for its EMS and the requirements of ISO, which is mainly and effectively implemented and maintained. All right. Then management review. So the top management must review the organization's EMS at planned intervals, and also to ensure its continuing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the project. And improvement, mainly the general improvement, which include that stability, suitability, adequacy, effectiveness of EMA, and environmental performance, and conformity, and corrective action, where it has to react to non-conformities, and take action to control and correct them, deal with the consequences, and eliminate their root causes. All right, and then improvement. So continual improvement of EMS will be always there in order to enhance the environmental performance. So this is all about the environmental audit. Now let us look into the solid waste management. All right, just a second. So coming to the solid waste management, it mainly refers to the complete process of collecting, treating, disposing of solid waste in an environmentally sound and an economically viable manner. And it involves the various stages, including the waste generation, collection, and collection, transportation, and sorting the waste, and its treatment, and final disposal. All right. So mainly this effective solid waste management is very important for several reasons. among which the environmental protection is one of the finest reason, where it minimizes the negative impacts on the air, water, soil quality, reduces the greenhouse gas emissions, and conserves the natural resources. All right. And the next one is the public health. Yes, this is the one of the again main important aspect, where the solid waste disposal should be in a proper way in order to prevent the spread of diseases, reduces the breeding grounds for the pests and vectors, and creates a healthier living environments for the human beings, right? Then resource conservation, where recycling, reuse of waste materials, reduce the need for the virgin resources, saving energy, and minimizing the environmental degradation associated with the extraction and processing. And economic benefits. So, in the proper waste management sector creates the employment opportunities in order to collect, process, recycle industries, and it also lead to cost savings through reduce the landfill expenses and the scale of recovered materials or energy. So, aesthetics and quality of life can be improved by proper waste management that prevent the littering, reducing the odors, enhancing the visual appeal of the communities, and all. And then coming to the types of solid waste. So, the types can be categorized in several ways depending on their source, nature of it, and the potential hazard of it. All right. So, based on the source, mainly it has this municipal solid waste. So it is mainly generated in the commercial establishings like shops, restaurants, offices, institutes, mainly particularly schools and hospitals, street sweepings within a municipality, and it is often what we call it referred to as garbage or trash, always. So these all comes under the municipal solid waste. So when coming to the industrial solid waste, it is mainly generated by the manufacturing department and industrial process power plants, which include the scrap metal, chemicals, sludges, ashes, and other byproducts. And coming to the commercial solid waste, where it mainly generates from the businesses or retail stores, restaurants, hotels, offices, etc., which mainly include the packaging materials, right? Food waste and all these, and construction and demolition waste, mainly generated from the construction sites due to its renovation, repair, demolition, buildings, roads, bridges, etc. And this includes mainly the concrete, wood, metals, and all these materials, which actually has a huge impact on the solid waste disposal as well. And coming to the agricultural solid waste, mainly rises from the agricultural activities such as crop residues and discarded packaging and all, and minimizing the mining waste. This is the mining waste that is mainly collected from the process mining resources, that is extraction and processing of the mining resource mineral resources, and which mainly include this overburden, tailings, waste rock, and all these. And coming to the healthcare or biomedical waste, mainly includes generated from the hospitals or the healthcare units, which includes the needles, syringes, infectious waste, pharmaceutical waste, or biomedical waste. All these also comes into this category, and this all are the waste from the source. Now, if you look into the nature based on the source, so coming to the nature based on the nature, so the composition, the type of it, and all will be included in the another one, which is based on the nature of the waste. So mainly it is like biodegradable waste, which includes this organic waste that can be broken down with the help of microorganisms under natural conditions. Yeah, and which mainly includes the food scraps, yard waste, paper waste, cardboard waste, anything as such which can be which can be like food stuff or biodegradable waste, and then non-biodegradable waste, which is nothing but the waste which cannot be easily broken down by the natural process, which mainly includes the chemical process or the equipment needed, and which mainly includes this plastic, metals, and the synthetic materials, and recyclable waste, which is nothing but glass, plastic, metals, and these all can be processed and reused in order to create new projects. New products. And then coming to the inert waste. Inert waste is that which does not undergo significant physical, chemical, or biological degradation. Where examples which include the concrete bricks and rubble, and composite waste, which is made up of the combination of different materials that are difficult to separate, such as laminated packaging or other electronic components. All right. So based on the nature, based on the source, the category of the waste have been identified. So now let's look into the based on the hazard potential. So hazard as in the hazardous waste and non-hazardous waste. Coming to the hazardous, where the waste that possess the substantial threat. All right, so the substantial threat to the human health or the environmental, mainly due to its toxic or flammable, corrosive, reactive. All this also comes into consideration, and examples mainly include the chemicals, pesticides, batteries, electronic waste, and all these hazardous waste also should require special handling of waste and disposal methods as well. Okay, and then coming to the non-hazardous waste, that waste does not exhibit the waste which does not exhibit the hazardous characteristics, that is which comes under municipal solid waste and industrial, commercial, and construction and demolition waste. All these are also are non-hazardous, but yet when it is not contaminated with the hazardous substances, that is if it is not having a spill of acids and all these. All right. So next go, let us see the composition and the characteristics of solid waste. All right. So if you look into the composition of the solid waste, mainly the organic waste, which is mainly the biodegradable one, that is the food waste. It could be anything cooked, uncooked, non-veg, or fruits, vegetable scraps, all these also, which is having high moisture content. All right. The yard waste, that is the garden waste, grass clippings, branches, leaves, and other garden debris, which is often seasonal, and it is more. And mainly during the fall season, we get more of this kind of waste, and this is also biodegradable. This is also having high amount of moisture content. And the paper and the cardboard process, okay, paper and the cardboard, which is technically organic, but they are also often considered separately for the recycling purposes as well. All right. And then coming to the inorganic waste, which is non-biodegradable ones, which includes the plastics, that is the PET bottles, the PET ones, HDP, PVC, all these also, which can vary by their recyclability and the chemical properties. And next one is the glass, which is often recyclable, and metals, which is like highly recyclable, which is iron and steel, or non-ferrous ones, they can also be recycled. And textiles, like clothing, fabrics, these also can be recycled. Leather and rubber, that is shoes, tires, all these also products which are non-biodegradable yet can be recycled. And construction and demolition waste, concrete, wood, and all these also comes into non-biodegradable waste. And electronic waste, that is the e-waste, which is like old computer phones, appliance, laptops, and other metals, plastics, dust. These are all also hazardous substances which are non-biodegradable ones. And another inert materials are the ceramic, ash. All these also come into non-biodegradable category. So coming to these are all of the composition of it. Now let's look into the characteristics of each solid waste. All right. So characteristics mainly refer to the physical, chemical, biological properties of the waste, which mainly influences handling, treatment, and the disposal of it. And coming to the physical characteristics, where mainly we'll be looking into the consideration is the density, particle size, moisture content, and the permeability of the waste. And then calorific value also, like how much it is mainly important for the waste to energy technologies, and how much amount of energy is released when a unit mass of waste is burned. All right. So now if we look into the chemical characteristics of the solid waste, mainly the chemical characteristics as in it pH comes into consideration, where that is mainly like acidity, alkalinity of the waste is mainly considered, can be established by the ensuring the pH activity of it, and chemical reactions and leachate properties also mainly depend on the pH. All right, the nutrient content of it mainly important for the composting process and the overall chemical balance of the waste, and the presence of hazardous substances like heavy metals or toxic chemicals, persistent organic pollutants, and other substances that poses severe threats, all right, severe risk to the human and the environment. And this can be mainly determined if the waste is hazardous, and if it requires the special management for its proper treatment or for its proper disposal activities. Alright, so coming to the organic matter content, where the overall proportion of the carbon containing compounds influences the biodegradability of it, and also for the potential for the biogas production and the calorific value. And coming to the carbohydrates, where sugar, starch, cellulose, all these also are biodegradable ones, which contribute to the biogas production as well. And proteins, so mainly found in the food, and they contain the nitrogen and the sulfur, which can influence the odor and the composting processes. And coming to the lipids, which is mainly present in the food waste, and this have the high calorific value, but can also be slow to degrade in in anaerobic conditions, and can cause issues in the wastewater treatment if not managed properly. All right. So again, after lipids, we have this natural fibers, that is the cellulose-based materials like cotton, jute, and wood, and the biodegradability always depends upon the processing and the form of it. And they can also contribute to the organic carbon content. And coming to the synthetic organic materials, where man-made organic compounds like plastic, synthetic textiles, and other rubber types also will be included, and they are generally non-degradable and can also persist in the environment, and it may release some harmful chemicals upon degradation or incineration. And it can be non-combustibles, that is organic materials that do not readily burn, but they include mainly this glass, metal, ceramic, and stones, ash. All these also comes into this non-combustible ones. So, how do we even process this kind of solid waste? Mainly by the on-site or off-site. Let us look into this. If it is like on-site handling, it mainly refers to the activities which are associated with the management of the solid waste at the point of generation, before it is getting collected and transported for offsite processing or disposal. This mainly includes the segregation, storage, and sometimes initial volume reduction. All right. So this all comes into the on-site handling. Uh, in this, again, there will be like segregation at source, where it is a main step, and it also involves separating different kinds of waste into the designated bins or containers at the point of generation. So, what are the main common segregation categories? That is the wet waste, dry waste, and domestic hazardous waste. All right. So, wet waste, which is often this is a biodegradable one, which is food, vegetable, yard waste, and all this. Dry waste, which is non-biodegradable, but yet it can be recycled. That is glass, paper, metal, cardboard, iron. All these also come into this kind of waste. And domestic hazardous waste, that is the batteries, CFL bulbs, paint cans, cleaning agents, and all these are also the domestic hazardous waste. And storage, so storage should be there in a proper way of this segregated waste. So based on the segregation, that is wet waste in one kind of a bin, and dry waste in another kind of a bin, and domestic and hazardous waste in another kind of a bin. If it is not segregated in that way, then it can also stored properly also, in order to prevent odor, pest infection and environmental contamination will be occurred. And this mainly involves the using appropriate containers mainly that should be leak proof and durable, easy to clean, adequate in size for the amount of waste generated, and covered to prevent the access by the vectors and then reduce the odors. And it should be clearly labeled for different waste categories. All right. And coming into the on-site processing. So on-site processing mainly involves the treating and transforming the solid waste at the generation site to reduce its volume, change its characteristics, and recoverable resources. All right. So handling is different from processing. All right. So on-site processing mainly involves the composting. All right. So segregation of it, and then and there it has to be processed in the form of composting. Composting mainly it is a method for processing the organic waste at the source. All right. It mainly involves the decomposition of the organic matter by the microorganisms in the presence of oxygen, which results in the nutrient rich compost that can be used for the gardening or the agriculture purposes and also enriches the soil. And coming to the home composting bins. All right. So they will be simple bins for household with gardens. All right. So that in that way that can be like the segregation and all this also can be separated. And then vermicomposting, where by using earthworms to break down the organic waste, and it is suitable mainly for the smaller quantities for the indoor activities, smaller usage. And coming to the aerobic composters, where the enclosed systems will be there then which provide the controlled aeration for faster decomposition. So during aeration process also the decomposition occurs of the organic matter. And biogas generation will also be occurred when large generators for the organic waste, like the source where the organic waste can be majorly generated, like restaurants or the institutions or that kind of things will small scale anaerobic digesters can be used in order to produce the biogas. All right, which can be used for the cooking or the electricity generation along with the nutrient rich digestate. So these days most of the restaurants are using this kind of biogas generators, where the food waste and everything can be dumped into that anaerobic digester kind of a thing, where it can slowly because it produces heat within itself and then produce some gases called biogas that are particularly with major proportion of methane that can be used as a cooking for purposes or for the electricity generation, and that is how it can be reutilized. And shredding and crushing and reducing the size of certain waste materials like yard waste and everything can be used for in order to reduce the bulky packaging and in order to have a easy storage purposes and all. Coming to the next one, which is the baling. So mainly it it compresses recyclable materials, mainly the cardboard, plastics, paper, into bales for easier storage and transports to the recycling facilities. All right. So as we see some lorries carrying bit kind of cardboard materials tied together, and that can help in the easy transportation. And reuse and repair, mainly the activities focus on extending the lifespan of the projects, and the materials on site such as repairing the broken items or finding new uses of the old ones. All these also comes into this kind of category. And what is the main effectiveness of this on-site handling and processing? It may because it is mainly crucial for several reasons. That is, that reduces the burden on the municipal collection and the treatment systems, improves the quality of the collected waste for the recycling purposes, and it can also reduce the volume and the weight of the waste requirement transportation and disposal, and leading to the savings ultimately. It also facilitates the resource recovery at the source, and it improves the hygiene and aesthetics at the generation site. So now let us see collection of the solid waste. So till now we have seen on like composting or on-site processing and all. So now let us see into this collection of the solid waste. So collection mainly involves the gathering of the solid waste from different sources, and let us see different collection systems. That is the curbside collection. That is curb, or there are some points where it can be placed by the generators and collected by the municipal or the private crews, and this is mainly common for the residential areas, right? And then block collection, so residents bring their own waste to the designated collection points within a block or a neighborhood at a scheduled timings. And door-to-door collection is also there in many of the apartments or the buildings, where the collectors go to each household or established to collect the waste. And this can be more labor intensive but can improve the segregation rates as well. And then container systems mainly uses various sizes, types of containers, that is dumpsters, bins, placed at a strategic location for the waste disposal. Now after collection they have to be transported, right? So for the transportation of the solid waste mainly involves the moving of the collected solid waste from the collection points to transfer locations, transfer stations, processing facilities, or the final disposal sites, and which mainly include the transfer stations, that is intermediate facilities where the waste is unloaded from the smaller collection vehicles and then reloaded again into a larger ones, that is long haul vehicles, the mainly called as rail cars or the trailers, for the most efficient transportation to distant disposal sites. All right. So these transfer stations can also include some of the primary sorting or the compaction process. And then transportation routes, so there are some routes which has to be planned efficiency in order to minimize the travel distance, time and cost, considering the traffic congestion and the road conditions. And then transportation vehicles, mainly the larger and the more efficient vehicles are used for the collection trucks kind of a thing, which are used for the long haul transportation. In terms of cost, this transportation can be a significant portion for the overall waste management budget, influenced by the distance and fuel prices, vehicle maintenance and the labor, and environmental impact, where the fuel consumption will be minimized and the emissions from the transportation vehicles is minimized in order, which is very much important for the environmental suitability. So coming to the after transportation, there is a segregation of the solid waste, where it is separates the different kind of waste materials. After the transportation, whole thing is dumped at a one dump yard, and then it is separated based on the different types of waste materials. It is ideally done for the source, that is on-site segregation, and it can also occur at a different transfer stations or processing facilities as well. So effective segregation is mainly suitable for the improving the recycling efficiency, that is separating recyclable from the other waste streams increases the quality and the market value of it, and facilitating the composting and biological treatment, reducing the volume of the waste requiring disposal, and safe handling of hazardous waste, improving the aesthetics of collection and storage. All these also comes into consideration, and different types of waste segregation can we can see here. That is biodegradable waste. That is the wet waste. All right. Which can be broken down into smaller substances like CO2, water, and humus, and by microorganisms, particularly bacteria and fungi, under natural conditions through the process like aerobic decomposition and anaerobic decomposition. Then the main recyclable materials are the food waste, yard waste, paper and cardboard, and the agricultural waste, and all this also comes into focus. And handling and processing, where this often collected in the green colored bins and requires more frequent collection due to its tendency to decompose and produce the odors. On-site processing, ideal for the composting, at home, or vermicomposting for small scale biogas generation, and centralized processing, which can be processed through large scale composting facility or the anaerobic digestion plants. And landfill, where while biodegradable waste will decompose in landfills, and this process releases methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. And the main benefits of the segregation biodegradable waste is to reduce the volume of the waste going to landfills, minimizes the methane emissions from the landfills, produces the valuable compost for the soil enrichment, can be used for the generation of biogas, which is a renewable source of energy, and improves the quality of the dry recyclable waste by preventing the contamination. If you look into the non-biodegradable waste, which is the dry waste, which includes the plastics, glass, papers, and textiles, and this can persist for the long time in the environment, and it cannot be digested or broken down by the natural biological process. All right. So if you look into the leather and rubber, electronic waste, construction and demolition waste, all these also come into non-biodegradable ones. And if you look into this handling and processing of this segregated waste, so mainly the collection in the blue. All right. So these non-biodegradable ones will be collected in the blue color bins, or rather designated color bins or bags, and which have less frequent collection schedules compared to the wet waste. And recycling, which where many components of the non-biodegradable waste are recyclable. So proper segregation of the materials is very crucial for the effective recycling. All right. So mainly, other one is to handling of the processes is that landfilling and incineration. Landfilling is that non-biodegradable ones occupies the landfill space for the extended periods, because it will take long recycling period. And incineration, some of the non-biodegradable waste can be incinerated, sometimes with energy recovery, but this can have air pollution concerns if it is not treated properly. All right. And benefits of segregation of non-biodegradable waste is that it facilitates the recovery of the valuable resources through recycling procedures, and saves energy and reduces the greenhouse emissions associated with the manufacturing of the new products, and minimizes the long-term burden on the landfills. And coming to the recycling and the reuse, where which are the cornerstones for the sustainable waste management. All right. So recycling and the reuse are the two more most critical strategies within the hierarchy of the waste management, aiming to minimize the waste generation, conserve the natural resources, reduce the energy consumption, mitigate the environmental pollution, and they represent a shift from the linear take, make, dispose kind of a model in order to have a more circular approach. All right. And coming to the recycling particularly, it involves the collecting and processing used material to manufacture the new products. So this process mainly transforms the waste that would otherwise end up in the landfills into the valuable resources. So what are the main common recyclable materials? That is the paper and the cardboard, metals, electronics, textiles, and all. So the main benefits of the recycling is the conservation of the natural resources, energy savings, reduced green gas emissions, reduced landfill waste, and economic benefits as well. So coming into the reuse which involves the using a product or a material again for its original purpose or for a different purpose without significantly altering it. So this extends the lifespan of the items and prevents them to becoming the waste prematurely. All right. And main examples for this reuse are the reusing the reusable shopping, using the reusable shopping bags instead of single-use plastic bags, and refilling water bottles or containers instead of throwing, and donating or selling used clothing, furniture, and household items, using glass jars for storage, repurposing older materials for crafts, and reusing packaging materials, reusing refillable ink cartridges. All these also comes into consideration. So come benefits to recycle. All right. So once if you recycle, what are the benefits? So significant waste reduction, resource conservation, energy savings, cost savings, and reduced environmental impact, and promotes the creativity and the resourcefulness. All right, so this is all about the solid waste management. And if we come to the treatment and the disposal of the solid waste, so basically after the after the collection, after the transpiration, segregation, solid waste needs to be treated and ultimately disposed of, right? And these methods are chosen based on the waste characteristics, available resources, environmental regulations, and the public acceptance. So, coming to the first one is the open dens, which is uncontrolled and mainly unregulated sites where the waste is simply dumped on the land without any environmental protection measures. Alright, so coming to the advantages, where it is a very low initial cost, simple in operation. Coming to landfills, it is engineered sites designed for the control and disposal of solid waste, and modern landfills mainly incorporate the measures to minimize the environmental impact, and which is relative low cost and large volumes of waste, simple in operation. And coming to the land sanitary landfills, and which is an advanced engineering landfills design to minimize the environmental and health risk. These sanitary landfills reduce the environmental impact, control the emissions, and improve the public health, better aesthetics, and potential for the land reuse. All right. So coming into the incineration process. So incineration is nothing but the waste to energy process where the burning of solid waste at high temperature reduces its volume significantly and potentially in order to generate the electricity or heat. So the main advantages is significant volume reduction, energy recovery, and can handle mixed waste, and potential for the metal recovery from ash, and composting. So composting is another process where it is a biological process yet again which decomposes the organic waste and into a more nutrient rich soil amendment called compost. Alright, the advantages of this process is reducing the landfill waste, reduces the viable soil amendment, reduces the greenhouse gas emissions, relatively low energy input, can be implemented at various scales, and supports the sustainable agriculture and horticulture, and all these. So these are all coming into the solid waste management, where there are several other treatment and disposal methods, where open dumps, sanitary landfills, incineration, composting, all these also come into consideration. Um, let's look into this hazardous waste. So in the next class, we will be discussing about this hazardous waste, where um, mainly like what are the different types of hazardous waste, how it is like hazardous waste, what are its types and the main characteristics. So let us all look into it. So initially, the what is a hazardous waste? So from where do we even get this kind of hazardous waste? It is mainly a waste with properties that make it very dangerous or the potentially harmful to the human health or the environment. So basically, the regulatory bodies like the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, that U.S. EPA, classify the hazardous waste in several categories. One is the type of hazardous waste that is listed hazardous waste, that is F type, K list, P list, U list. All right. So listed hazardous waste are the specific type of waste streams that US EPA has determined to be hazardous. All right. They can be further divided into four lists. That is the F list, which is a non-specific sources list waste, and these are the waste which are commonly obtained from the industries and manufacturing processes regardless of the specific industry. So these are all like there are different types of waste that and all we'll be discussing in the next class here. and then the sources, its characteristics, and effects of the hazardous waste, and all these, or control of hazardous waste, all these also we will be looking into it in the next class. All right. And thank you for your listening and patience and time. And yeah, thank you so much.